Hello, welcome to WSBP TV. I'm your host, Gwen Picallo, Director of the Women's Small Business Program. As we're entering the spring and summer seasons, we're entering event seasons, right? Prom, weddings, special events, tours, tourism. Transportation is a huge part of all of those events. And if you want to arrive somewhere in style, you might consider using My Daddy's Caddy, a luxury chauffeur service using a mint condition 1976 Eldorado convertible, Cadillac Eldorado convertible. Its owner is Caroll Spelke, a WSBP alum. So please help me welcome Caroll to the show. Caroll, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So Caroll, can you tell us, what is My Daddy's Caddy?
My Daddy's Caddy is a luxury transportation system here in the state of Vermont, and we use a classic Cadillac convertible as our main form for transportation. We have one car, that is the car, and we have a great time driving it around.
I bet, and it's a gorgeous car.
Yes.
We'll be, throughout the show, flipping through some pictures of that beautiful car and you and some people who have been in the cars, so that's great. So Caroll, this is a ridiculously unique business, right? So how did you get into it?
Well, it was a lot of very strange events that all kind of came together all at once, and the catalyst really was my father passed away about 3 years ago. And in that process, he left a few things behind, one of them being the Cadillac Eldorado that they'll be seeing photos of and that we use for my business. And it was also a car that meant a lot to me growing up. I've always been in the back of them all my life, so I really wanted to keep it, but really it posed a challenge because financially, to own a classic car, it does take quite a bit of finances to do that. So I was under the impression that I would have to get rid of it. And it wasn't until, in the light of everything, I was very frustrated with my dad's passing and everything that kind of was coming my way. And I got in the car and I drove to New York City because my dad had passed away in Stamford, Connecticut, so it was about a 45-minute drive, and my dad was a New York City limo driver, so I knew how to navigate New York City since I was very little. And I was in the financial district trying to find a parking space, and it was these two young ladies were like, "You, with the Cadillac, we want to ride." And I was a little hesitant, and I was like, "I'm not giving rides, that's strange." And I'm trying to find a parking space, and they're like, "No, we'll give you money." I was like, "You would pay me money to drive you around in this car?" And they said, "We would pay you good money." And that's kind of when it all kind of clicked, and I was like, wait a minute, maybe there's a possibility. And I had a good friend too who had a friend in the Netherlands that was his business model. And he started a transportation business with only classic American cars, and it was very successful. So I figured Vermont's a unique place and always embraces very unique things. So I figured that I could possibly find a niche here, and I keep finding over and over again that vintage is in, very in. And also a lot of people, young people my age and younger, have never experienced anything like this. Classic cars are becoming rarer and rarer, and not everybody has access to being inside them, so it's very neat.
That's great. So the seed is planted. New York City, the seed is planted. Yeah. So then there's a lot between that and starting a business. So what was next? You came to WSBP. What encouraged you to take WSBP?
Yeah, well, so Burlington being the community it is, a lot of word of mouth, and a lot of people had expressed what a successful, essentially, program starting your business with Mercy Connections and the help that they provide you and the community that they provide you within the cycles that you're in. And so I was really excited, and also trying to find other women too, and finding other women business owners or potential business owners that wanted to start businesses here in Vermont. And so from the people that I spoke with that had gone through the program, they spoke very highly of it. And so I applied and I started going through the program. It was very overwhelming. It's a lot in a very small amount of time, but It was very much the most foundational work I could have done for myself, and really has given me the legs that I'm standing on today. They taught me a lot around business operations, because I've never been a business owner, especially luxury transportation is a completely different experience. There's a lot of different components to it that you really wouldn't think of until you're actually doing it. And so those were kind of like some of the tools. The business operation aspect is like, so I'm still filling the blanks in, right? But they gave me the format essentially to be able to start structuring that. So I could start logging my hours as to how many hours it takes for me to fill out emails and write emails to people, and creating these little marketing packages that I send to people when they're like, hey, can you come to this expo? Or putting together different brewery tours based on where the geographical space of my clients are, all these different things. And also a lot of what my business requires me to do is be really creative with the connections that I have. And if anyone's taught me that, I think it's Mercy Connections, because that's kind of what I took away from it the most, was the connections that I made with the women in my cycle. And we still stay in contact. We still have an email listserv that, the women will post let's get together, let's talk about business, or check out what I'm doing with my business, and this is how you can support me. And it's really neat watching other women. Also, it gives there are times where I'm like, is this really worth doing? And I get very discouraged and frustrated, and I have a connection of young entrepreneurs as a result of this business and different networking experiences, not just in Mercy, that we talk about burnout. We talk about, what is really involved in trying to keep your head above water.
The hard part of entrepreneurship, right? It's not all sexy. It can be very difficult.
Yeah, and separating business life from your life, and how important that is, and self-care, and these things that we're definitely part of the discussion in Mercy Connections. And I mean, there's not too many organizations or any kind of educational institution that I've been a part of that is actually a topic of discussion, right?
Right. How are you going to take care of yourself and things like that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you kind of touched on it. Can you tell us maybe some of the challenges you had in the Women's Small Business Program, some of the areas that you found very exciting, that you felt you excelled in, and then do you still use any of the information you learned in the class? Because you graduated from cycle 49, correct? So that was a couple of years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. So are you still carrying that information with you?
Definitely. Yes, obviously, I think the word is yes. How that looks, there's a few different questions in there that I found interesting, and that I kind of want to really touch on, because there's so much that you could talk about.
Absolutely.
But I felt that probably the most interesting of the different aspects, right? There's the business operations, there's the finance, and there's the marketing pieces. Those are kind of like the three-legged stool, right? As to what is keeps you stable. And marketing for me, because my business is so unique, it was very interesting. I was just sitting in class one day, and one of the women in the program said, "Caroll, your car is its own billboard." And I was like, whoa, I never even thought about that, because I'm thinking of how do I market this? Do I put stuff on signage on the car, which you can't. It's there's a lot of things that are a part of it, but it gave me the idea to start I found, because I go to car shows as well as a way of networking and letting people know that this service exists. Because a lot of car show people do have people that come up to them and ask them for, can you drive me in my wedding? And and there's a lot of things that go into that some of these people don't actually know, that if they ever got into a car accident, if they don't have the insurance for it, it would be tragic for them and their family. Because those things are things that I had to think about and really come to understand about my business, and have had to put that into place. So I am legally licensed, insured, and permitted, right? There's also a permitting that goes in here to Burlington that I almost didn't pass. There's a lot of these different things that, you can do as much research as you can, and that's kind of what Mercy Connections gave me the motivation to do and the structure to do. but until you're really out there, because I called, City of Burlington. I'm like, what do I need to do in order to get my chauffeur permit and my limousine license? And they told me such and such. I show up and they're like, oh, well, we can't take any car that's over 10 years old.
Whoops.
I was like, what?
Oh, no.
Unless, and then thank goodness there was an unless it's in perfect condition.
Which, hey, here enters the Cadillac.
Yeah, which I started giggling, and I was like, I'm sure it will totally come up to your standards. It's perfect, for sure. So,
oh, that's great.
And they thought I was insane for turning it into a limousine. But besides, so like those kinds of things, things started getting really creative. And that's kind of like what that whole process was for me. It was kind of like my incubator. But again, like you can do as much incubation as you want, but until you're actually doing it, that's kind of what I experienced, was just like there was so many more things that I just hadn't thought about, or that because my business is so unique, no matter how much market research I did, there was just no way that it was going to really provide me with the information that I need.
Right.
So that was one of them. Some of the challenges that I faced was just it was an overwhelming amount of information. And I'm finding right now as a business owner, I am sorely lacking in one of those 3 pillars, which is the finance piece. And it's really overwhelming, and to a point where I'm really doing myself a disservice and kind of putting my head in the sand, which is not good. And so what I love about Mercy Connections is that they also provide ongoing support, and I'm going to be applying for you guys' financial, it's financial freedom class?
Personal financial empowerment. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what that is. So the personal financial empowerment starts in September. It's a class, it's a 7-week class followed by a 10-month individual and group coaching program to really help you find hope and clarity around your personal financial situation, whatever it might be. So Caroll, we'll look for you then.
Yeah, totally.
And so Caroll, tell us a little bit about where you are now. So I want to hit on the big elephant in the room. You're a seasonal business.
Ooh, yeah.
So how do you deal with that? You're a seasonal business. You're running quite a successful business now. Do you have some strategies to help you deal with that? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, so again, the marketing implementation plan that I walked away from Mercy with was I have so many different niches that I can be a part of. Again, I get overwhelmed easily, so I have had to just kind of focus on a few, and then every year either add to that specific niche or find another one to kind of like get my feet wet in.
Kind of like a priority list.
Exactly. And so number one that was so incredibly clear was weddings. So weddings has been my primary source of income with the services that I provide. And so, and they're amazing. Like what my service does, it's not just like, right, we're not just transportation, we're an experience. That's kind of the tagline that I've come up with, because if somebody really just wanted transportation to point A to point B, they wouldn't be calling me. And they're actually, like, my clients invite me into the most intimate experiences of their life. It's really, truly an honor. Anytime I get an email from a prospecting, like, bride or groom, it's just, like, just the email itself is just enough to just make me want to keep doing it. Because I get to be a part of what's called like life stage events. And so life stage events usually only happen once in a lifetime.
Fingers crossed.
Depending. But proms, anniversaries, weddings, all those different things are really amazing experiences to be a part of. And they get to walk away with me to be a part of that and the car to be a part of that. So there is a sense of I build connections through these experiences, and some of them continue. Like I have some of my clients who are yearly, they're annual, and they come and they renew their vows here in Vermont from Florida. This year I'm the bridesmaid, a maid of honor or whatever.
Chauffeur and bridesmaid services.
Yes, it's amazing. It's so, I cannot wait. And so with that, there's those pieces, but the seasonality of it can be a little frustrating But because it's so short, as everybody knows in Vermont.
Right, yeah,
Summer
it's
here is
about
very
2
short.
weeks, yeah.
Pretty much. And so, and it really doesn't warm up enough to really, because I will discourage people from my service to an
If they
extent.
can't use the
Top down.
top down.
Because I just don't really see it being as much of an amazing experience as when you can have the top down. Right. And so, because who doesn't want a 360 panoramic view of Vermont?
Exactly,
Yes.
right.
Amazing. And so that's kind of one of the pieces for me is I really, as a business owner, want to make it a real experience for people, and an experience that they're going to walk away from satisfied and happy. And not only that, but they're going to walk away from Vermont as tourists saying, I can't wait to go back, or tell their friends about it. Because even as the tourism season is approaching, I am an ambassador for Vermont and for Burlington and for what's around here. People come to Vermont because they want to experience everything about it. I mean, I'm in love with this state, and I'm in love with what we have to offer here, from food to culture to music to sightseeing and the environment. And so, very avid outdoors person, as a lot of people that come here are. And people come here with their family. Like, it's a historical tradition that people like from New York or Connecticut come to Vermont, and they come every summer or every winter or whatever the case may be. And it's just fantastic to be part of that. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get into those pieces. But I've found with my business, it's mostly word of mouth. And so when I do set up shop in the very beginning, my implementation plan focuses primarily on proms. That's my first season, and graduation. But again, it's a really hit or miss because of the weather. And then after that, usually that's when wedding season starts. And wedding season can go all the way to the end of October, which is great because my business is till October. And then from there, that's also when tourism season starts. Once things really start warming up, things here are green and blooming and beautiful, people really start showing up in hordes. So, yeah. And that's when we do our brew tours, our wine tours, our scenic tours, and then also from there, like, the parade season starts, which is one of my favorites. I love parades, and getting people and my friends into the car, and we do like the 4th of July parade in Bristol. Also the little smaller parades. I did the kids parade last year, which was really fun. Children love cars. Yeah. They just love cars. And so, and I've done like 9-year-old birthday parties.
Oh, cool. So it really runs the gamut. And so, as we're closing up, I know that you had mentioned that you'd like to mention your experience with another transportation company that kind of taught you the ropes. Can you quickly talk about what that experience looked like?
Yeah, and that was one of those things that Mercy Connections really, because they were saying, hey, get in contact with people that are part of your industry. And that was very intimidating. And they were like, no, just call him, just call him, just call him. And I called everybody pretty much in the state of Vermont that offers any kind of luxury
comprehensive.
Yeah. And one of them was Middlebury Transit. And Bill and Sarah Fuller, the owners, sat down with me, had lunch with me, and invited me to be part of their team as one of their drivers to see if this was something that I actually wanted to do. And even just Bill's story, in terms of how he started his business. He was actually a lawyer. Like, he was making a lot of money as a lawyer, but it wasn't until he realized that he bought a luxury transportation system car and started that he fell in love with essentially the experiences that he has with connecting people from all around the world that come to Vermont, from speakers to government officials. Like, you run the gamut, and jazz musicians. Like, as their driver, I got to drive some very interesting people and kind of experience and see if it's something that I wanted to do. And he primarily got into it because it was fun, and that was the element that really is the foundation for my business as it is his. And the day that it's not fun, I think it'll also be the day that my daddy's Caddy is no longer around.
Well, let's hope that never happens. So, Caroll, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they book a service? How do they find out more about you?
Yep, the best way to do it would most likely be the website. I try and direct people to the website as much as possible. And there is a form for an email that comes directly to my email box. also giving me a phone call is usually the best way.
And all that information is on the website.
Yes, it is.
And that website is mydaddyscaddy.com.
Correct.
Great. Carol, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn more about starting your business, visit WSBP.org to learn more about the classes that are coming up. Caroll was a graduate of the Startup 15-week Comprehensive Business Planning course. We also have some other courses that help you figure out if business is right for you, and also to look into your personal finances. So thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of WSBP TV. Take care.